Sound check 1, 2, 3.
I'd like to welcome everyone to General Issues Meeting Part 2, July 30th, GIC 26011, I believe is the number. Welcome back, committee members, the media, staff. Thank you for being here. We have Councillor Francis online in chambers, Councillor Clark, Cooper, Maureen Wilson, Kretsch, Alex Wilson, Wang, and Kassar. Just quickly, please don't leave if you have to currently. I'm expecting some more people, but right now we are at quorum, so stay and ask if you are going to leave. Thanks. We're on items for consideration. 8.2 PD 26151, sports tourism hosting opportunities citywide. Mover and seconder to put the item on the floor, please. Councillor Kassar, Councillor Wang. There is a confidential appendix. Hopefully we don't need to discuss that. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, I'm going to move to the electronic vote, please. And this is to recommend whatever's in the report. Just give us a sec to get the robots working, or the wizards. Welcome, Councillor Jackson. Yes. That carries 9-0. Thank you. Moving on to 8.3, PW 26081, ERO 0260419, invitation to municipalities to register potential interest in implementing a wastewater public corporation model. Mover and seconder to put the item on the floor. Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Wang. We'll go to Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that. I believe the report, when I did read it, offers the caveat that we don't know what the objectives are of this initiative by the Government of Ontario, and so we're kind of responding a little bit in a vacuum. But I would like staff, first of all, to give an overview and give particular emphasis, if they could, to the pilot that is ongoing in Peel, and to perhaps opine on what might be the objectives, in your professional opinion, and or that of GM Zagarix on these initiatives.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. We're going to go with Director Winters first, and then we'll go to GM Zagarix. If he has something to add, Director Winters, a couple-minute overview. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Nick Winters, Director of the Hamilton Water Division. So to the councillor's question, there have been ongoing discussions at the provincial level for a number of years about the potential benefits of municipal water, wastewater, public utilities. There are existing models in Ontario where this has proven to be effective. Aqua, which is a provincial agency, is one example. Union Water out in Windsor-Essex County is another. And I know, talking to the leaders of those utilities, the benefits that they see is that really you're pooling assets, and as a result you're able to achieve economies of scale. We treat a lot of water, wastewater from chemical purchasing, contractors that work in those systems. The more assets, the more you do, you can get some cost efficiencies there. As part of the Peel region review that the provincial government initiated a couple of years ago, there was a lot of talk about a transition to separate governments, separate municipal governments for Town of Caledon, City of Brampton, City of Mississauga. That never ended up happening, but a key topic of discussion through those was this continued idea of combining the water, wastewater, stormwater functions between the lower tier municipalities and the region of Peel. And that's something that carried on beyond the departure from that regional government review. And so the province, through legislation, moved forward to mandate that Peel consolidate all of those functions along with the lower tier municipalities under the region of Peel. And that's a pilot that is ongoing now, and the purpose of the pilot really is to prove out the provincial government's belief that there are going to be efficiencies achieved through centralization of all those functions. And I will say that as the leader responsible for the utility here in Hamilton, I agree that there are benefits to a model where you have the utility who is providing end-to-end operation. Thinking from treating water all the way to serving the customers that are using that water, that's an important thing. Same thing from collecting wastewater from the customers who are generating that wastewater, taking it all the way from collection to treatment and discharge to the natural environment. This is something that Hamilton already benefits from in our existing model, and I think it's a very important thing as the leader of the utility to have eyes on all of those operations and be accountable for those operations. So I do expect that Peel Region is going to achieve significant value from making the transition under this pilot. From a financial perspective, we're unclear on where efficiencies or additional value might materialize from that change. And so that is one of our major areas of interest to follow along in the pilot is, are there financial efficiencies that are achieved? How are they showing those as part of this pilot program? My perspective is that we already benefit from anything that's going to be created, but we'll be happy to follow along and see what else there is. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Director. GM Zagarek, anything to add?
If I could premise that question to GM Zagarek, apologies, Chair, for interrupting. I am interested in hearing your opinion on, my understanding is the capacity to issue debt is going to be transferred to the model, but the ongoing operating costs of what remains with the municipal governments. I'm just not sure. And if you could validate that or correct me and then offer a personal opinion on the opportunities or risks and the relationship to land use development, please.
GM Zagarek.
Through the chair, I appreciate Director Winter's summary and comments with respect to other jurisdictions. I'm not familiar with the experience in other jurisdictions, so I'll speak to what's proposed as it relates to a municipal corporation for water and wastewater, and more specifically around financial matters and governance matters. I understand what is being proposed is that the governance would transfer over to a separate board, similar to Hamilton Renewable Power, Inc., or to a certain extent, Electra, for instance. And so governance decisions would be made at the board level. I'll just weigh in a bit on operations in that not clear to me we have good coordination between our public works, more specifically transportation, engineering, roads, and Hamilton Water and Wastewater. If it was a separate entity, not clear to me how that coordination would continue under a separate entity. Financially, what is being proposed is this separate entity could issue debt, but the debt would still reside with the City of Hamilton. So it would not reduce our debt limitations. It would be reflected as City of Hamilton debt. But again, not clear if we would be issuing debt on their behalf, but at any rate, it would be City of Hamilton debt. We would be accountable, responsible for that debt.
Okay.
So in terms of servicing that debt, the rate setting would rest with the board. They would make decisions with respect to rate setting, as I understand it. The oversight, unlike electricity, the oversight would not be with a separate entity like the Ontario Energy Board. As I understand it, the oversight would be with the minister. The minister would have the ultimate approval in terms of approving the rate increase or not. I see the greatest risk under this proposal as it relates to the funding for growth. It's not clear whether or not this entity would be eligible to collect development charges.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
And if it does not have the authority to collect development charges, and the city would not have any authority to collect development charges on behalf of the entity, those costs, like hydro, like electricity, would be borne by all rate setters. So it would be a redistribution of those costs. So just highlighting some of the financial factors, as I understand it, as it relates to the corporation. Not clear for a single-tier municipality what this would potentially result in terms of efficiencies or gains. And with respect to growth, again, development charges as being a large factor, but to my earlier point is just not clear in terms of whether we would continue to realize the efficiencies and effectiveness we have with delivering, whether it's growth enabling projects or state of good repair projects, that coordination across city departments, including Hamilton Water.
Thank you for that. You answered my third question, which was going to be about the DCs and the clarity. Appreciate your overview, both of you. Thank you.
Councillor Clark?
So does the ERO indicate anything beyond, or who would be issuing the debt? I mean, when the city issues the debt, we hold the debt. There's been a lot of talk at Queen's Park about attracting investors, and they would work to pay off the debt through user fees. So I'm concerned that these public utilities will actually be making money for private investors and putting that on top of the ratepayers. Can you speak to that?
GM Zagark?
Yeah, through the chair, I think I heard two questions, so maybe, and Councillor Clark, you'll correct me if I misinterpreted your question. Not clear as it relates to what is being proposed, whether or not the province is suggesting that there be private sector equity holders or investors as it relates to these utilities, whether it's through an IPO or some form of equity buy-in for the corporations. If we just make a parallel to electricity or hydro, electricity and hydro may have a return on an investment of about 9%. And so if you just assume that model, there would be some form of return on investment. And so under a corporation, and again, this would be under Municipal Corporation Act, under legislation, so very much operating like a corporation. So I'll just make the parallel with respect to electricity around 9%. With respect to debt, it would be City of Hamilton debts or municipal debt. Not clear whether or not the city would be issuing the debt. I'll assume they would, similar to, I'll use City Housing Hamilton, for example. As the shareholder, we guarantee and we issue the debt on behalf of City Housing Hamilton. So again, not clear as to what efficiency there would be as it relates to debt. Under our current model, debt is available to the City of Hamilton. Under the current model, that debt is an obligation under City of Hamilton. Under the proposed model, the debt would continue to be an obligation of City of Hamilton. Under the proposed model, I would assume the City of Hamilton would be issuing the debt. Maybe the only change would be the board would make the determination as to debt equity, the amount of debt, and that would be delegated to the board.
So if I'm hearing correctly, this new board would be arm's length from the City of Hamilton and could set whatever fees they want in terms of basically selling water and treating wastewater.
Through the chair, that's my understanding. However, it's my understanding that the ultimate deciding body would be the minister. And sorry, I apologize, not sure which minister. Unlike electricity, where it's the Ontario Energy Board, this would be ultimate decision making in terms of approval would lie with the minister.
I'm not sure if that provides me great comfort or less comfort. Is there a way of putting into our comments back to the province that it needs to be a revenue neutral operation, that any revenue that they collect from fees is the actual revenue that's required to pay for the capital and operations? In other words, we don't want anyone from the private sector making money off this.
Through the chair, we can take that away if it's the will of committee to amend. What I'm understanding and hearing is the City of Hamilton would want to ensure that the model would be self-sustaining, that the revenues would satisfy the operation and capital, and that the funds that are generated are reinvested into the city and would not include some sort of a profit or margin that would be redirected outside of investments into the system.
Yes, that would be my suggestion. I'm a little bit concerned that the motivation here, at least from the minister and cabinet, seems to be the elimination of development charges paying for water services and sewer services. That's going to change the pro forma significantly, and I'm worried about private sector involvement. So that's my concerns. I'll leave it with the committee.
Okay, so just so everybody's clear, the recommendations are that would staff be directed to submit the responses that are in Appendix A, indicating that the city, while the city is not advocating for particular governance models, prepared to work with the province to support governance arrangements that ensure the continued delivery of safe, reliable, cost-effective water, wastewater, and stormwater services. That is the vote currently. There's no one on the speakers list. So if we're not making an amendment to that, then there we go. Councillor Clark, go ahead.
Thank you. So I don't want to draft an amendment on the fly. We're going to be ratifying this at council next week. So I'd like to direct staff to take away and provide a comment whereby the model is not a profit-making model. That's the cleanest way of saying it, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
James Agaric, if that's okay?
Yeah, through the chair, staff can take that away and propose some amendments before council, circulate them before council.
Perfect. Thanks so much. We will go to the vote. The vote is up. That carries 10-0. Thank you. 8.4, HSC 26054, Family Shelter Transition and Short-Term Hotel Overflow Funding Extension. Any discussion on this item? Councillor Clark? I didn't get a mover in a second. Councillor, are you okay moving this?
Nope.
Okay. Councillor Jackson? Anyone else for a seconder? Councillor Kassar, it's on the floor now. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. So it reads that we're going to increase funding by an additional $2.6 million for family shelter beds. We're already spending inclusively $190 million, and we're getting $29 million from the province and $14 million from the feds. When does it stop? Why aren't we saying the province should be dealing with this? Or at the very least, the province pay half of it. Like, the property taxpayers can't afford this. So, question to the staff, why aren't we going to the feds in the province saying, look, and I don't even know who these families are. Were they folks who came in through our immigration services? Where's the funding from the federal government for that? They just can't keep pawning it off on municipalities as though property taxpayers are an endless bank account that they can utilize.
Director Baird, can you provide the reasoning behind the extension?
Thank you, through the chair. Michelle Baird, Director, Housing Services Division. Councillor, thank you for the question, and there's important clarification here. So right now, the hotel overflow provides, as its name, it's overflow from the family shelter system, and it's a temporarily funded program. $4 million annually comes from the levy. Another $2 million comes from the provincial HPP funding envelope, so it's $6 million annually to operate. That funding, the levy portion of that funding, the $4 million, ends at the end of 2026, so December 2026. And so this is not additional funding, but rather the $4 million ends, and this is 2.6 million for the period until the end of June next year while we transition away from the hotels. The plan is to move families away from hotels because hotels, it's not necessarily an amenable situation for folks seeking shelter. With respect to who stays at the hotel, it can be families experiencing homelessness for all sorts of reasons, some fleeing violence, poverty, inability to pay rent, much the same as, the factors we talked about yesterday. I would say it's a complex interplay. The issue for families, of course, is the impact on children and intergenerational poverty. So family homelessness is a priority for us in the community to deal with. I just want to make it clear it's not an additional $2.6 million on top of what's already spent, because the $4 million ends at the end of this year.
Councillor Clark.
So where exactly is the $2.6 million coming from?
It's coming out of the reserve, but Director Baird?
Through the chair, correct. The $2.6 million would come from the Housing Sustainability Investment Reserve.
And wasn't that city money that paid for the reserve?
Through the chair, I'm hoping GM Zager could answer that portion of the question.
Through the chair, I would assume so. I'm not familiar with all of the transfers to the reserve, but I would assume if there was any funding from senior levels of government, that funding would be clawed back if we had surpluses. Through the chair, sorry, GM Mader is also identifying that some of the reserve strategy that was approved over this term of council, which included some of the COVID-19 reserve funds, also form part of the transfer to that reserve.
Okay, so the funding of $2.6 million based on the resolution is authorizing temporary family hotel overflow funding from January 1, 2027 to June 30th, 2027. And you're saying that that money is coming from the reserve and that the feds in the province didn't contribute to the reserve.
They're just conferring. GM Zagar, do you need the councillor to repeat the question?
Through the chair, apologize. Yes, please.
So the resolution reads that the $2.6 million is coming from this reserve. It's for services that will be provided January 1, 2027 to June 30th, 2027. And I asked, did the federal or provincial government contribute to that reserve?
Through the chair, it's my understanding those are all municipal contributions to the reserve.
And so is that $2.6 million new funding?
Through the chair, if I understand, and I'll invite our GM Mader to correct me if I'm incorrect, it's one-time funding for the period January to June. So again, it would be new funding relative to what was approved in 2026, but one-time funding for 2027.
Councillor Clark.
So the $198 million that we've spent or will be spending in 2026, is this money a part of that money, or is this all new money that next year we're going to now be spending $200 million?
Director Baird?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. So right now, there is a levy contribution of $4 million of that $190 million that goes to pay for the hotels, along with $2 million from the province. The $4 million ends at the end of this year. And so in order to continue the hotel operation for the period of time that we transition, this 2.6 million is new funding, but the 4 million ends. So it's actually replacing that.
And what happens to the $2 million from the province?
Through the chair, my apologies, that contribution continues.
Okay, so in 2027, we're going to spend $2.6 million. We still have $2 million from the province that has not been spent. Will that be a part of this funding?
Through the chair. So as we go through the transition program, we're looking to invest in permanent family shelter beds. So moving away from the hotel into permanent beds. That $2 million is part of the operating dollars to realize that long-term solution.
Okay. And so the intention of what you're doing here is from January 1 to June 30th of 2027, that's to allow for temporary hotel overflow space. And the reason it's 6 months is we're phasing out of that program in 2027?
Through the chair, yes. In 2027, we're trying to move away from full reliance on the hotel and instead have permanent shelter spaces that more meet the needs of families that are using those spaces.
Okay. And the last question I have, and I know I've taken up too much time, my apologies. Are we still advocating to the province saying, hey, where's your support for the homelessness in our community? Because $29 million doesn't cut it.
Through the chair, from the staff perspective, certainly we are, Councillor. We have those conversations on an ongoing basis, and we continue to indicate that the funding doesn't meet the needs of the services that we need and provide within Hamilton. And I know that those conversations are happening at the political level as well.
Councillor Clark, I have another. You good?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kassar?
Thanks, Chair, and I appreciate the Councillor Clark's questions and the answers. I share the frustration about the continued tax burden on the taxpayer, so thank you for highlighting that again. Just continuing that thought, so understanding here that moving from families from hotels to a more permanent shelter program or structure is better for them, which is good. Are you able to speak at this point on the financial part of it? In the new model that we're looking to transition to, does the dollar go farther? I.e., can we house more or give shelter to more families with the same amount of money, or is it more expensive? Do you have any idea of what that looks like at this point?
Director Baird?
Through the chair. So right now we don't have, Councillor, unfortunately, we don't have a good answer to that question, that we don't know what will come forward through the call for applications. What we would hope that even if we are spending the same amount of money, rather than spending money, because right now we're spending money to rent hotel rooms, and then we're spending money operationally to provide the supports for the individuals that need them. In a dedicated shelter space, we would want to move away from those monthly rent costs for the units and have the funding going toward the supports that the individuals need.
Right. Okay, I understand that. I figured that might be the answer since it's early in the process, but I could see certainly how money could be adjusted and spent better for a better outcome. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No one else on the speakers list, so we will go to the vote on 8.4. The vote is up. That carries 12-0. Thank you. Moving on to 8.5, PED 26161, Revised Board of Management for the International Village Business Improvement Area, Wards 2 and 3. Mover and seconder to put the item on the floor. Councillor Cretch, Councillor Nan. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. The vote is up. That carries 12-0. Thank you. 8.6, PED 26163, Revised Board of Management for the Ottawa Street Business Improvement Area, Wards 3 and 4. Mover and seconder, Councillor Wang, Councillor Nan. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. That carries 12-0. Thank you. 8.7, FCS 26055, vacant unit tax 2026 bylaw citywide. Mover and seconder to put this on the floor, please. Councillor Cretch, Councillor Nan. Any discussion on this item? Councillor Tom Jackson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Spetaforan. Good afternoon. Just will be consistently opposed to this. This is talking about enacting and administering the program for another year, the third year for the vacant unit tax, which again, out on my ward today, talking to people overwhelmingly are still upset over this unnecessary tax. But I'm hoping that I hear that there may be, if not today, then possibly next week, there may be some motion to deal with what has become really an irritant, and that has been the $500 filing fee for those that either missed a deadline inadvertently, those that didn't know they had to meet a deadline of this fairly new tax still, and or for those that didn't qualify after staff reviewed their appeal, that they didn't qualify to have the $500 waived. But otherwise, I'm just going to be recorded as opposed to 8.7. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor McMeekin.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I will continue to support the VUT, but we'll re-articulate the point that Councillor Jackson has made and look forward to the motion. The idea that somebody, for whatever reason or combination of reasons, may appeal a charge under this tax, which is in the appeal process exonerated, found essentially innocent, but at the same time, whereas the outcome of that is still sent to jail, but having to pay the $500 fine just doesn't make sense to me. If you're innocent, you're innocent, and the fee should certainly be waived in those circumstances. So I look forward to the debate on the motion a little bit down the road. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McMeekin. I don't believe we can jail people over VUT, but who knows? Councillor Francis on the big screen.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I do intend to be the mover of that motion. I've circulated to council via email, and I'll just verbally introduce it now and move it next week at Wednesday's council meeting. Whereas council wishes to provide a fair and compassionate process for property owners who are unable to submit a vacant unit tax declaration by the required deadline due to circumstances beyond their control. Whereas bylaw number 26-blank, which we will know at council, includes provisions that sets out to achieve these goals. However, similar considerations is not provided in bylaw number 25-201, a bylaw to establish a vacant unit tax. Therefore, be it resolved that part 9 of the bylaw number 25-201 be amended to allow the director and or program administrator to waive the late appeal fee where a property owner misses the first appeal deadline for reasons set out in part 10, clause 62, proposed bylaw number 26-blank, and that only late appeals that are pending or late appeals that relate to a property owner's occupancy determination as prescribed in part 1 of bylaw number 25-201 will be considered. So, Chair, should that motion pass, it will essentially eliminate a $500 penalty for missing the deadline. Many of the people fined the $500 are examples exactly as described by yesterday's delegate, and there are many innocent people who have been fined $500 simply for an honest mistake, whether they've misplaced their mail, maybe have not received mail, which we certainly know it does happen time to time with Canada Post. and there's some folks that are experiencing language barriers, seniors struggling with the portal. There's real life experiences that are happening here far too often, and they're putting our residents in a very unfortunate circumstance. And my motion sets to rectify that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor France. And just a reminder to everyone, we are not voting on the amendment today. It's coming to council, so today is strictly the bylaw in front of us. We'll go to Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just trying to understand some of the finances around the returns. I'm seeing that we're about, I think, just over 80% collection so far, collections ongoing, getting close to that $7 million mark for 2024. When I'm looking at some of the materials in earlier presentations on the agenda, albeit that was now yesterday, I'm seeing that that's about 4% of the annual total spend on housing, considering municipal contributions, provincial contributions. I'm wondering if staff would be able to comment on the relative scale of, $7 million in terms of the portfolio, and the context that it's not coming from the levy, that money is coming from the reserve piece. Just how does that contribute to the financing picture, kind of from our affordable housing portfolio?
Who's going to be taking that? Director Pereira.
Through the chair, Clayton Pereira, Director of Revenue Services. Thank you for the question. Just as a starting point, just wanted to confirm, as per the report that's in front of committee, the net VUT revenues is about 8.02 million. As of the authoring of the report, there's been a slight change, and I got the vacant unit tax team to update that just based on ongoing appeals. As you can appreciate, there were 35 appeals, so that number came down slightly to 7.94. So that's the quantum that we're looking at after all costs are considered, operating costs as well as the one-time implementation costs. So that's the number we're working with. And again, just to emphasize that there will be ongoing appeals till the end of this year for the 2024 occupancy year. So with that, I'm now going to pass it over to James Zegaric to answer the next part of the question.
Through the chair, it was council's direction that the net proceeds from the vacant unit tax be directed towards the housing affordability reserve. It is one of the few non-tax revenue sources that the city has with respect to, while the approximately $6 million has been realized, what staff are recommending is that transfer to reserve coincide with the delivery of the 2025 audited financial statements, which would be in 2027. So it would be at that time then before council as it relates to any recommendation staff would have as to how to reinvest these net proceeds towards housing and housing affordability.
Councillor.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, as this program continues, if we continue the program as council, I guess I have the chart looking at our spend from various sources open, and in 2024 we spent a collective about of $180 million across total programs. We're now sharing that it's taken a couple of years, but we've now collected and can reinvest currently around $6, potentially up to around $8 for the year 2024 million. That's a substantial portion of going from, we're talking about 60% plus funded from municipal taxpayers to now a non-taxpayer funding source. That means that as we keep doing this in future years, that if we maintain funding levels, we don't increase funding levels, we are able to rely less on property taxes and more on non-property tax revenue to fund the same level of service. We know from the housing conversation that that's not we're not maintaining the same level of service every year. Need keeps outgrowing, and that's led to some of these kind of constant budget pressures and constant needs. But in terms of shifting the funding source, through you, Chair, it's just my comments that I think this is, incredibly substantial, up to about a 20th of the total program spend, I think it's rare that we get to say, oh, we found a way to move 1 in $20 of a program or 1 in 20th of anything off property taxpayers in this role and find a way to have non-property tax revenue. So I do think that this is a success story for this program and look forward to this program continuing, albeit improving. And I think that's a really helpful argument, because if we can build public trust and confidence in these stories and in the results that come, and when we can fall back and say this is where that $6 million went to further that story of how this is a good news story, I think that all helps. But yes, in the meantime, absolutely supportive of continuous improvement. But I think this is a great news story. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Cassar.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll continue to support the VOT as well. Similar to Councillor Wilson, just some brief comments. We've had several reports in the last 24 hours on seeing how challenging the homelessness situation is. It's actually getting worse. There has been a desire to see us move the needle, to see results from the dollars we spend, and to actually not see more people on the street or encampments. So we have to do something about it, and this is doing something about it. It's one of many tools. I understand that there's opposition to it, and it's change, and it has negative impacts, and we need to minimize those. So I welcome ideas, the one that's been just shared a few minutes ago, and any others, to have compassion, to improve the process. We should absolutely do that. But part of improving the entire city is to deal with the homelessness problem. And we've said many times, I think all of us have said it, we shouldn't be on the backs of property taxpayers. As Councillor Wilson just said, that's what this is about. Should it have to come from a VUT? Not necessarily. It should come from upper levels of government, but we don't have that luxury at this point in time. So, it's not a perfect process, not a perfect decision, but it's something that we have to do, and I'll continue to support it and look forward to deliberating ways to improve it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for the director. We're seeing a lot of places being built right now and they're not able to be sold. This vacant unit tax, it hits those new builds at a certain point. Question?
Director, new builds, at what point do they start paying vacant unit tax?
Through the chair, for new builds, there's a leeway that was afforded by virtue of the bylaw that enabled an exemption for 6 months. And then the additional 6 months, because for the following year, or where there has to be 183 consecutive days of occupancy. So in effect, in total, there's an opportunity for new builds to be exempt for 1 year before changes are made in order for them to be sold.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. And I've asked this question before, and I'll ask it again, as we weren't sure last time I asked the question, which was, so there's instances where people are buying these units because they can't get financing, job situation changes, it goes back to the builder. At that point, does the vacant unit tax kick in on the builder?
Through the chair, if I could simply ask to repeat the question again, please.
Certainly, yes. So many situations today, after someone expresses an interest in buying a house or a unit, for whatever reason, they can't get the financing or they lose their jobs, these units are reverting back to the builder. Okay, and so in that situation where it reverts back to the builder, when does the vacant unit tax kick in?
Director.
Through the chair, this would be treated very, very similar to a property that is sold between a buyer and a seller. So in the event that there are economic situations that trigger essentially a sale treated as an ownership change back to the builder, the implication would be, again, an exemption in the period that it is sold. So we have had several properties as an example where a declaration was not required when a property was sold, because by virtue of that, the seller would only have an obligation for the following year.
So would that, how long would that be that they would have when it reverts back to them? Through the chair.
Through the chair, it would be 183 days.
183 days. So I'm aware of somebody that had 40 of the units go back to them, right? And so my question to you is, do we understand the chilling effect that the vacant unit tax has on new builds right now in Hamilton?
Councillor Cooper, we're going to answer both. GM Zagarek wants to add to the last question, and then we'll get an answer to this one. GM Zagarek?
Yeah, through the chair, just expanding on the first question and possibly to Councillor Cooper's last question, just a reminder, and we do appreciate the challenges that the development community is experiencing, especially around the condominium development community. The vacant unit tax only applies to developments of 6 units or less. So if it is a condominium development, the vacant unit tax does not apply to a condominium development.
So in a situation of building homes, how does that work for them?
Through the chair, they would not be exempt, and so it would apply to a single or a semi or a town row or any of those forms of development.
So in that scenario where there's 40 units going back to somebody where single homes, that would kick in 6 months?
Through the chair, yes, that would be right.
Okay. And so I'll come back to the question. Do we understand the chilling effect this is having amongst the builders in our community in terms of building in Hamilton? Through you, Chair.
Through the chair, we have certainly had several dialogues and communications with the development community, in particular with the vacant unit tax. Several of those we have assisted in actually helping them with the declaration to navigate this new program. And I've actually incorrectly declared in year 1, and we have assisted them to correctly declare for 2024 as an example. We have continued that with other developers as well to assist with correctly declaring, and have been quite appreciative of the support from staff in regards to the program and how to navigate it.
GM Zagarek?
Yeah, through the chair, just want to recognize the vacant unit tax team and their responsiveness. Councillor Cooper, to your question,
Yep.
Yes, in that over the 2 years, the team have sat down with developers. There are issues such as model homes that we provided clarity such that model homes would form part of that exemption, helping developers initially the 6 months did not reside within the program, so amending the program to provide 6 months. So I would say staff are recognizing the challenges within the development community and have been responsive and built in these factors during the first 2 years of the program.
Last question, Councillor Cooper. Thank you.
Thank you. More of a statement. What I've been hearing is that this is really having an impact on whether people develop in Hamilton or not, because this is not common among, I'll say, our peer communities surrounding Hamilton. So this is having a chilling effect on what's happening in Hamilton right now, and it may be something we might want to look at and provide some sort of exemption going forward if this program continues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair. My question is with regards to page 5 of 9. It indicates the appealed properties. So are these properties under appeal, or they have been dealt with already?
What page was that? Sorry, Councillor.
Page 5 of 9 in the report shows up till June 17th, 2026, 3,493 properties. Then up to July 3rd, 2026, 3,576 properties. Trying to understand if they are actively under appeal, or does that mean those were the ones that were appealed and they lost?
Director Pereira?
To the chair, the 3,576 properties are mostly ones that have successfully appealed and they are closed. There's only 186 properties of those that are pending review, just because the vacant unit tax team is working with the respective property owners to get the appropriate documentation.
So you're saying that those numbers where it says appealed properties means that they were successful in their appeal, so they're no longer counted under the vacant unit tax billed properties. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. Do we have an understanding of how much it costs to go through those appeal processes? And who made the determination on the appeal?
Through the chair, the costs would be depending on when they were appealed. So if they appealed prior to council providing the extensions in 2025, the last one being November, then there would have not been a cost associated to that. However, if there were appeals deemed, or I want to be careful with the word deemed, if there were appeals that were introduced in 2026 as a late appeal, the $500 fee would kick in. And to answer your second part of the question, the vacant unit tax team would firstly review that, and then it would go up to the leadership team to make a determination based on the documentation supplied.
Thank you. And with regards to the $500 cost, if they were successful in their appeal, do they get their $500 back?
Through the chair, no, they wouldn't.
So we made $1.7 million off of a $500 appeal for 3,576 properties. That's a lot of revenue just off of an appeal fee.
Director,
I still have concerns about this. Thank you, Chair.
no problem. The director just wanted to follow up. Go ahead.
Through the chair, not all of the appeals were in 2026. So the total revenue associated with the $500 fee totaled $242,000 to date.
So the chart is not quite that clear then. So where does it say that on the chart?
Through the chair, do you mind just repeating that question again?
I'm looking at the chart on page 5 of 9. And you're saying only a portion of those properties paid $500. Where would I find the actual accounting for that?
Through the chair, it's not something that is readily available on the table, but happy to take that away and provide that.
I would appreciate it. Thank you. I will continue to oppose this tax.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. We have no further speakers. We will go to vote again on the bylaw. This does not include the amendment that was introduced earlier. Oh, okay. Sorry. This does not include the motion that is coming at council, just strictly on the bylaw. And we'll bring that vote up now. And the vote's up. That carries 7-5. 8.8, outstanding business list. Mover and seconder to put the items on the floor, please. Councillor Clark, Councillor Cooper, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Clark and Cooper. Vote is up. That carries 12-0. 8.9, LRTC 26-002, Light Rail Transit Subcommittee Minutes dated July 13th, 2026. Can I please have a mover and seconder to put this on the floor? People, I need movers and seconders. Councillor Nan, Councillor Wang. The longer it takes to get them, the longer we're going to be here. Any discussion on the LRT Subcommittee Minutes? Votes up. Please vote. All right. Go ahead.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
No problem.
I understand this is part 2 of a long day yesterday. Thank you. 8.1, I'll ask for a separate vote on the light rail transit municipal betterment process update because it's talking about that recommendations be approved regarding the pursuit of the LRT. So if I could ask through you to Director Sheikh, I know I'm not on the subcommittee. I know I raised this during the budget of 2025 about there not being, it was confirmed at that time, a written agreement from the federal government based on a business case from Metrolinx submitted upwards to the federal government to have a written agreement about their 1.7 billion and the provincial 1.7 billion corresponding as well. So I know I'm not on the subcommittee. I thought maybe in courtesy, given my interest, there may have been a follow-up. So is a written agreement in place? Let's find out today for public consumption through you, Deputy Mayor, please.
Director?
Through the chair, my name is Abdul Sheikh, Director at the Project Office. In terms of business case, as Metrolinx presented at the LRT subcommittee last time, I don't have the business case information. What I understand that Metrolinx has already provided all the information to the federal government, and they already have received the support on proceeding with the project. And we can see the representation of several MPs attending the LRT announcement in April that provide the sign that federal government is still supporting the project. But I haven't seen the business case provided by the both parties.
So Director Sheikh, thank you for honestly saying what you know and believe. But to quote you again, please, you just finished by saying you haven't seen, and please correct me if my ears are plugged, you said you haven't seen the business case from Metrolinx and you haven't heard or seen an actual written agreement from the federal government in spite of all the assurances that you rhymed off that seem to be in place. Just a simple question. Have you seen the business case from Metrolinx? Have we seen a written agreement from the federal government? That's all I'm asking, Deputy Mayor Spadafora. Please.
Director?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor, for the question. I haven't seen, like city has not received the business case, but as it remains between the province and federal, but municipality has not seen the business case yet.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director. 8.1, if you'd separate that for me, Deputy Mayor, so I can have a separate vote. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Nan, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Spadafora. Happy to confirm to my colleague around the table as chair of the LRT subcommittee, it was confirmed during the three-level government event that took place at the stadium earlier this spring that the funds have been allocated in the federal treasury. That was confirmed multiple times. So the money is in the treasury allocated to the LRT Hamilton project.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark?
So then the promises of Minister McKenna that the federal money would only flow if there was a guarantee of not-for-profit housing, we haven't received that guarantee. Can anyone speak to that?
Is there anyone that could speak to that question? Director? Microphone, please.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Clark. In their announcement, they did not attach any condition, as Councillor Nan mentioned. So what we understand that they are committed to 1.7 billion. However, we are actually working with province to establish a working group so that we can, advance that affordable housing mandate along the LRT project. And that we are still waiting for that committee to be established.
Yeah, and I'm still struggling to understand all of this because the province, their own rules indicate that it's supposed to be the highest and best use. So Metrolinx is bound by the Ministry of Transportation rules, which is highest and best use for the lands. So the federal government promised us that they were going to tie their $1.7 billion to ensure that there was not-for-profit affordable housing along the line on lands that are owned by Metrolinx, and that all has disappeared over time, just for the public record. Can I ask specifically about this report 8.1? It says, Municipal betterment candidates. Can you help me understand the definition for that?
Director?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. We have already provided a list of what we think is a potential betterment candidate. And we are not saying that these are the confirmed betterment items for the LRT project. So that's the reason we are calling them as a candidate, and is going to go through the proper due diligence process to see the cause, whether we are getting a good value for money or not. And then the plan is to bring the shortlisted betterment items for consideration to consider as part of the LRT project. So far they are considered as a candidate. And after the due diligence are completed, we will bring that information to LRT subcommittee to recommend to be included as part of the LRT project.
Thank you. So nothing has been decided is what you're saying. You're still going through the process, correct?
Through the chair, yes, exactly. We are going through the process, and we are committed to bring more information to the LRT subcommittee before we commit to Metrolinx to include as part of the project.
Thank you, Chair. That's it for me. I still remain concerned that as time goes along, we're losing a lot of these promises that were made to us. It's very disappointing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McMeekin?
Yeah, briefly, Deputy Mayor, I attended the announcement, the joint senior level government announcement at the stadium. And the one question I had in my quiver of questions that was really important to get answered was the one on housing. And I spoke to both the federal rep and the provincial minister directly, and both affirmed their commitment to putting that working group in place. The mechanics of it, you know, gosh, anyone can guess as to how that's coming together, but I was pleased that the commitment was at least made. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Going to ask one more time if there's anybody that'd like to speak to this item. Seeing none, we're going to separate 8.1. So we'll do that first, then we'll do the rest, and then we'll do the correspondence. So we have a mover in Councillor Nan and Councillor Wang for 8.1, and we'll bring that vote up now. Votes up. Councillor McMeekin? That carries 10-2. Now we're going to move on to the rest of the items. Same mover and seconder, Councillor Nan, Councillor Wang. That vote will be coming up, and it's up. That carries 12-0. Same mover and seconder, Councillor Nan, Councillor Wang, to accept the correspondence. And it's a show of hands vote, please. And that carries. Thank you. Moving on to 8.10, BIAC 26007, Business Improvement Area Subcommittee Minutes, July 21st. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Cretch, Councillor Wang. Any discussion on the item? Councillor Wang.
At the BIA subcommittee, there was some robust conversation around the holiday parking. So I just wanted to mention that Councillor Maureen Wilson will be putting forward a motion at Council to actually shift the dates of the holiday parking to the 24th, November 24th to December 24th. It was something that we just couldn't get done for this particular GIC, but it will be coming for council. And so just to let BIA subcommittee members know that we heard you. And we've had lots of emails and emails and emails about this. So just thanks to also Christina Geisler as well as DC Angela McCrae on their heavy lifting on this one. So Councillor Maureen Wilson will be bringing that forward on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, we will go to the vote. Votes up. That carries 12-0. 8.11, CC 26005, proposed amendments to the sign bylaw citywide. Who wants to move and second this one? I'm good if no one wants to move and second it. That's perfect. Councillor Alex Wilson, we have one mover. A seconder? Councillor Wang, are you seconding this? Okay, Councillor Wang has seconded. Discussion on the item. I'm sure there'll be some. Please populate the speakers list. Councillor Crutch, start us off.
Briefly, I think that this is an issue that could generate lots of discussion. I'm hoping that we won't all just repeat one another. I don't support this simply because I think that it's introducing chaos at a time during a municipal election and we're changing timelines, and that's not really good practice. I understand there's a legal situation here, so I think turning our minds to this for the next election is the right thing to do. I also think we should be mindful of the fact that we haven't done public consultation on this. We haven't had discussions with the public about this. And one of the big reasons why this ended up changing many years ago was because there was a lot of sign pollution because the pier was much longer. And frankly, it's understandable, and as an incumbent, me saying this is a bit rich, that, people want to have more time to advertise, right? So if people wanted to have time that weren't incumbents to advertise longer, I can understand that feeling or sentiment. But we have to balance that with the community's need, not to want to see election signs dominating the lawns of every place around town for an extended period of time. So I think a reasonable approach to this is just to say, hey, we get it. Something has occurred here in the legal landscape. We should consider this and do public feedback in 2030 and leave it at that. I just don't think it makes sense to interrupt this now. Also to say that many campaigns are already ongoing across the entire city. People have made plans already with respect to how they're going to do these things. So some people have already ordered things, some people haven't done so yet. Moving it up an entire month, especially for folks whose campaigns maybe can't absorb that kind of chaos, I think could cause harm for people. Set up a competition happening earlier, put people in a weird place. So everyone's already been told when the date's going to be. It's been heavily advertised and people registered. I think changing it now is not the best.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jackson.
Deputy Mayor Spadafora, wards 2 and 6 are in alignment. Let the minutes, LA Glenn Bruzon, would you please note that? Thank you. Sincerely, I've been on both ends of it, of course, many years ago starting out, and now since then being an incumbent. And I remember years past, we used to have, if memory serves me right, many years ago, we literally could start after Labor Day. So 2 full months, and don't forget back then, about 15, 20 years ago, it was early November. That was E-Days, and that was eventually moved up towards the end of October so that we didn't hit into sometimes colder weather in November, Deputy Mayor Spadafora. And I remember 2 full months of signs, and boy, did we get bombarded, past colleagues and myself, about the sign pollution, the extended period of sign pollution. Now, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I love signs. I enjoy signs. I think they're a proper and acceptable way to advertise who I am to the everyday voter. And so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I support signs, but I also saw from past councils and hearing from the community that there needs to be a reasonable cutoff. And I think all of us abided by it 4 years ago. The 28 days before E-Day, I think, is sufficient. I did a little research. City Clerk Trenum was very helpful, and I understand this is more coming from City Solicitor Shields and her team, because it was basically a joint report that a tiny township in Ontario somewhere had a challenge, and so they lost the challenge of restricting X number of days for signs in court. And so I know the lawyers, the courts, the judges, law is based on precedent, and I just do not like going in a direction where something happens somewhere. And so, yes, let's be cognizant of it, but that doesn't mean we have to suddenly overhaul everything because of that. To my knowledge, we haven't had a challenge. And quite frankly, what's recommended here today by City Clerk Trenum is August 24th, 3 days after nominations close, where he certifies all the candidates. Well, why stop August 24th then? Let's go back to May 1st, when the first registered day was allowing candidates. I mean, let it be for 6 months then, if we're afraid of limiting or restricting the period of time for signs. So, Deputy Mayor Spadafora, to conclude, I was prepared to parse that portion of this recommendation off to go back to revert back to the 28 days before, but if there's a move on, instead to refer this back to staff and for the next term of council, whoever's here for the 2030 election, and especially involve community consultation, I'm fine with that as a plan B for myself. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Spadafora.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, and I appreciate that you're aligned with Ward 2. Councillor Wang.
Thank you. My ward shares 2 ridings. So I have Hamilton Center, MPP, and I also have Hamilton East Stony Creek, MPP. And I think I am not in support of this because I think that if a by-election was called as soon as what we think is August the 5th, that's right in the middle of all of that stuff. So I think Ward 4 constituents would be very confused because after Kenilworth Street, you'll start to see 4 different colored signs and then 4 different candidates that are registered for the municipal election. I think that it would just be very confusing for at least Ward 4 candidates, but ultimately for Ward 5 and Ward 10 candidates as well, and constituents, I mean. So I just believe timing of this is terrible, and I do not support this at all, despite the fact that I'm seconding it on the floor, putting it on the floor. That's why. Thank you.
We understand, Councillor Wang, no problem. Councillor Alex Wilson.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I think there's kind of 2 pieces of fairness here. One is the fairness of, what are the courts telling us with respect to everyone's individual rights? I want to go put something out on my lawn because that's my political representation, and then Hamilton bylaw comes by and a candidate who provided me that sign is potentially getting a fine as a result. I think there is what happens if that gets appealed, the enforceability, the technical instruments of that are unfortunate. Just given the litigious moment we are in. But on the other side of that, there's the internal fairness to, we are maybe limiting that right, if that's what the courts are doing, but we're limiting in the same way for everyone. It's the same period. It was advertised well in advance. We're based on, I'd say what Councillor Crutch shared earlier, an openness to changing it, but not changing it in stream for folks. Doing that, at a time where everyone will be impacted by that change equitably. I think that's a fair consideration is, yep, maybe right now we don't have a best practice, but by changing that best practice, are we introducing a new harm or a new bias potentially? Just given the fact that it is midstream, as many have pointed out. I'll just finally conclude and just say, though, I did grow up in Waterloo region where election signs don't have to be on private property. Sign pollution and sign shenanigans are real concerns, and the need for municipalities to protect public rights of way, I think is real. Toronto, there was a huge issue in a past election with a candidate kind of flagrantly disobeying the bylaws and policies. So I think there's a real public good to be protected here, and I think there's reasons to have limitations in a sign bylaw. I don't think they're arbitrary, despite maybe what we're hearing from some of that case law. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be curious to know if the City of Hamilton has ever fined a property owner for having an election sign on their property for something or other.
Director Smith, how far back does your knowledge go? Have we been fined?
Dan Smith, Director of Licensing and Bylaw Services. I don't have that information at the tips of my finger. I'd be happy to do a history check and share that information with the councillor.
It's more curiosity. I find that our bylaw team spends a great deal of time taking down signs off of public property on boulevards and all the rest of it. That's what they end up doing during an election, and that's not their role. They should be actually out there dealing with actual issues where municipal law enforcement is involved. I read the decision. The decision talks about political signs being a vital form of democratic participation, and municipalities must ensure any restrictions are evidence-based, proportionate, and justified. We haven't done that with our bylaw. And we should use this opportunity to start that process. Civic engagement would be a part of that process. And then develop a bylaw that is justified, that's proportionate. The Supreme Court has ruled frequently and reminded people that freedom of expression under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is not an absolute. There are restrictions on what you can and cannot say, depending on what the issue is. So in my position here, I'm fine if we want to go down this road, but I'm nervous about it happening right in the middle of an election. Incumbents will be accused that, well, you've already got all your signs, so you can get your signs up right away. I haven't even raised the money to put my signs up. It creates this power imbalance between incumbents and non-incumbents, and I don't want to create that type of artificial issue in the middle of an election. If we are going to do this, and I think we should look at it, then it should be started early in the new term of council, and they should go through that process of talking to the public. Because, Chair, in my political experience, I have not had one person tell me that they love election signs. I can tell you many, many times how many people tell me they don't like them, and I could share with you privately some of the language that is used to describe the election signs. So they're not popular with the public. People do it because they feel in that moment when a candidate is on their front step and they're asking, would you mind if I can put an election sign up? Canadians are pretty permissive. So I think we should be, I'm not supporting this today. Do the civic engagement broadly across the city. Even do it as a plebiscite, so you actually can demonstrate that we've asked the public, and the public has told us they want them or they don't want them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Francis, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And based on everything I heard today, I wish to refer this report. And the language I've got here is as follows: that the recommendation respecting the election sign bylaw be referred to the city clerk for public consultation before any changes are considered, with a report back in advance of the 2030 municipal election. And I'm calling for a second around that. Sounds like I should probably have a few willing participants.
Councillor Ward 5. Oh. The recommendations are, hold on, listen. How about we do this? Everybody slow down, because I got people talking to me from every direction. Everybody just settle down and relax. Hold on one second. He's trying to refer the report back to staff. Can we do that, clerk? Yes or no?
So the recommendations in the report are to approve the bylaw. So we would have, those recommendations on the floor, so we would have to deal with that before, okay.
We are going to have Councillor Francis move it. Councillor Cook's going to second it. We're going to refer the entire report back to staff, being the city clerk, with the directions that Councillor Francis mentioned, which were to have public consultation and come back with something that the next council will vote on prior to the 2030 election. Any questions? Broad public consultation, please. Any other speakers, comments, questions? Seeing none, we will go to the vote on the referral. Moved by Councillor Francis, seconded by Councillor Crutch, and it will be an electronic vote. The vote is up. That carries 12-0. Thank you. We're moving on to motions. 9.1, development of a regional significant community hub at 700 Gardner Road East. Councillor Cassar, please introduce your motion and your seconder. Did you turn it off?
Thank you, and my apologies, Deputy Mayor Spadafora. My seconder is Councillor Wang. This was a notice of motion for one cycle, and we did have some delegations yesterday, a long time ago, when this meeting started, and there are many items of correspondence on the agenda. So I'll just be brief and give an overview. This is about the development of a regionally significant community hub at Garner Road East. There was a draft plan of subdivision council recently approved for these lands in Ancaster and Ward 12. And led by Kevin Gonsi, this is a group looking to bring a recreational facility for community recreation, wellness, and potential sport tourism to Hamilton. There is no request for any city funding, just want to make that clear. Made that clear during the delegation yesterday. It's not asking for city money. It's just asking for the city to participate and support a process on the feasibility of partnership and analysis of this community hub and report back in Q1 of next year. So, and it's driven by the fact that there is really no standard community or city process for this. And given the scale of it and the potential benefit, I think it's well worth staff investment that we could potentially bring through an outside group, an outside funding, something of this scale and benefit to the city. It's a good investment of city staff time to be able to provide some support and guidance on this process. So I'll just leave it there and let Councillor Jackson chime in.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Spatafor. I really appreciate Councillor Cassar's open-mindedness. They may end up wanting to change their name from the Mohawk Sports Park Community Hub because this is, Councillor Clark was just whispering to me, he said, is this two projects by the same group? And I said, no, this ideally then would, if everything went well, that it would be moving their original preferred site at Mohawk Sports Park, to my knowledge, over to 700 Gardner Road. And think of the synergies. This council will remember, and you've been just wonderful, to ultimately support the new Francophone school at 700 Gardner Road. That took about 11 years to negotiate between three parties. And that school and site plan and everything is underway. And but I know they don't have the dollars, to my knowledge, to build a community center, a rec center, fields for sports, things like that, especially an indoor structure that the Gonsi Group and Mohawk Sports Park Hub are proposing. And so when you think of the synergies, the Francophone Youth School, that's going to be a tremendous asset and landmark in Ward 12, ultimately. And to have a recreational component, potentially, I think is a wonderful win-win opportunity, especially for that cultural community. So for public consumption, if that ultimately does happen and the relocation to that area happens, then obviously that takes away the need for the acreage at Mohawk Sports Park. And as my colleagues know from ECS, Deputy Mayor Spatafora, staff are trying to, through Director Savor's team, trying to build a framework of how we receive in the future, whether solicited or unsolicited proposals. I think now in total, if you count the Mohawk College one recently, we have 3 or 4. And again, these are organizations, institutions, and mostly volunteer groups that recognize a need in the city and want to bring forward as soon as possible something that will benefit children, youth, families across our city, regardless of where it is. And we don't want to necessarily get them hung up on procedural technique if they have especially funding that's pending with deadlines involved as well. So I've always been very open-minded, supportive, and encouraging to groups that want to bring dollars forward, ideas, proposals, feasibility studies forward that they've done, that they know the city may not just have the time, inclination, or financing to do at this time, but ultimately councils of today and future have to ultimately approve the projects moving forward. So to conclude, Deputy Mayor Spatafora, really thank Councillor Cassar for his open-mindedness. In some ways, I'll be jealous because he'll have a gem of both a cultural new school as well as a potential of a recreational facility all at 700 Gardner Road. But then that will open up space potentially at Mohawk Sports Park possibly for something different. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Spatafora.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. So can I understand at the moment, because we don't have a process, we're looking at advancing this project at 700 Garner Road. But because we don't have a process, we have at least 2 community centers that have been in master plans for many years now and have not come to the realization. So is this usurping that process? I understand that we don't want to have a planning process that drags on and creates impediments to this type of development, but I'm also looking at trying to ensure that there's procedural fairness in how we're treating other proponents and other projects in other wards.
Director Savor.
Through the chair, Steve Savor, Director of Recreation. Thanks for the question, Councillor Clark. In terms of differences between our planned recreation centers and opportunities that the community might provide, I think this particular situation here is an opportunity, as asked by the motion, is to involve staff in terms of the due diligence in terms of reviewing this particular piece. It does not necessarily, in my view, take away from the work that staff are doing from planned recreational citywide services in that regard.
Councillor Clark.
But it could take the funding away.
I don't believe there's a funding request, but Director Savor?
If we think that there's not going to be a funding request attached to this, then we're naive. There will be a funding request. I've not seen one happen that has not had funding to the municipality, costs that the municipality has to bear. So how do we reconcile that?
Director?
Through the chair, at this, to the chair of the council, at this point, from the information that we have, understandable that in any project there is funding sources that need to be realized, but to our knowledge at this point, we have not received a request for funding.
Okay. So you're confident that this is not going to bounce out any other community center investments because there's going to be a requirement for future funding from the municipality?
Councillor Clark, I'm going to go to GM Mader. She wants to answer your question. GM.
Through the chair to the councillor, Grace Mader, General Manager, Healthy and Safe Communities. Thank you to Councillor Clark. Any request for funding, if there is any along the way, because you're right, we don't want to be naive, any request would come back to this table for information and approval.
Okay, I'll support it to get the information, but I have real reservations that we're hopscotching around and leaving community centers that have been promised to residents in a lurch. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Vote is up. I don't see her. Yeah. That carries 11-0. On the correspondence, Councillor Cassar, Councillor Wang will move and second it to put the correspondence on the floor. Any discussion? Seeing none, show of hands, please. And that carries. 9.2, options to provide financial assistance to eligible low-income seniors. Councillor Crouch, please introduce the motion and your seconder.
My seconder is Councillor Maureen Wilson, and this is specifically for low-income senior tenants. So as you may know, many of the City of Hamilton's programs specifically line up for eligible low-income seniors who own their homes already. And that can sometimes be with respect to their utility, all kinds of things that they can access. What we're trying to do here is get information from staff to understand how this might apply to tenants as well, because of course tenants, just because they don't own their home doesn't mean they don't have financial affordability issues. And right now, as tenants try to contact staff and apply for these programs, they're being told, sorry, you're not eligible. You can't apply to these same programs. The good thing about this is that the Ontario government has already moved forward with programs to align their eligibility programs to ensure that everyone is eligible based on age and doesn't discriminate based on whether someone owns their home or whether someone doesn't own their home. So this is moving us toward being in line with the provincial programming on the subject. That decision is not being made today. that was being made today is asking staff to report back on this, because there are going to be some cost implications for this, meaning there's going to be administration that has to be done, how we assess eligibility. So staff are going to report back on what's possible here, and it's a decision probably for the next council to make. But right now I'm asking for council to direct staff to report back on the eligibility criteria, administrative requirements, annual program costs, opportunities to align it with existing programs, and any required policies and bylaws, legal, operational, financial, and technological things. Thanks to staff for working on this with me. And it's been something that we've been talking a lot about with seniors downtown, because of course, as you know, 80% of the people who live in Ward 2 rent their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. What I don't see in the resolution is a clause that provides information to council about what the federal and provincial programming is. So a report back on what funding is available from the province and the feds for these programs. I'd like to have a better idea as to who's funding what. And this is just talking about creating a brand new low-income senior renters, basically financial assistance program. So what is the province doing? What's the feds doing? You know, from my perspective, if the federal government paid more for CPP and old age security to seniors, we wouldn't have the issue. The amount of money that they're getting for those pensions are very low. And given that about 50% of the population in Ontario, at least in Ontario, doesn't have a pension plan other than what the government is providing them, is really concerning, because a lot of seniors are on fixed income. So I'd like, at the very least, that staff, when they report back, that they include all of the information about where funding is available from the feds in the province for renters also. Thank you.
Councillor, are you okay with adding that to the motion, friendly, or?
Yeah, that's fine with me. There's can be a G saying, and report back on comparable programs from the provincial and federal government to do the same thing. I don't remember the name of the program right now, or I just tell you, it's just not in front of me. Oh wait, actually, maybe it is. Huh. Yeah, so the comparable program actually is the province's energy and property tax credit program. So it's not saying their energy and property tax credit program allows there to be eligibility for both those who own their property and those who rent their homes. So that's the program that we could say, that's the only one I'm aware of, and with the province. So perhaps we can get more information on that specific program and how it compares to, or if any provincial and federal programs compare. Sure, so it's fine with me if you want to add that as a G. Yep, any provincial and federal programs that are similar. I want to just clarify, though, that this is not about creating a new program. It's about we have a program already that we have at the city for seniors. And right now, the eligibility criteria is a contingency upon owning your home. And so, of course, that doesn't mean that people don't have active metered water accounts in rental properties. And that's what this is primarily about, is those kinds of situations where people have the same kinds of utilities or same kinds of issues that people in homes have, where they own their property, and homes where they rent their property. So yeah, I'm fine with that as a friendly amendment. If you want to add, report back on related provincial and federal programming.
Clerk, do you have that?
So, yeah, so G will read information on any provincial or federal funding programs available. Thank you.
Okay, that has been added. Councillor Clark?
And just to be clear, I'm not opposed to the concept or the idea. I'm just wanting to have a fulsome report back. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Have no one else on the speakers list. We will go to the vote. That carries 12-0. Thank you. Moving on to, lost my page. We are on item 10, notice of motion, 10.1 municipal property and building name and policy review. Councillor Nan, is this staying as a notice, or
it is staying Deputy as a Mayor, it's staying as a notice, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're moving on to private and confidential. We will take a motion to go into close for 11.7. And sorry, wrong number. I'll be right back. 11.4, 5, and 6. 11.4, 5, and 6. So I'll take a motion now to go into closed for those items. Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Kassar, and we will get that vote up while I hand vote, sorry. And the hands are up. And that carries. Thank you. Where am I here? Members of the public are advised that during the closed session portion of the meeting, the live stream will broadcast the closed session in progress screen. The broadcast will resume when the closed session portion of the meeting is complete. As we are now moving into closed session, I would ask all members of the public, delegates, external participants to please now exit the WebEx meeting. But I still have something else to read, so just hold on one second. I should have it memorized. So we're moving into closed session pursuant to 9.3 subsection A, B, E, F, and K of the City's Procedural Bylaw 21-021 as amended, and section 2392 subsection A, B, E, F, and K of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as a subject matter pertains to the security of the property of the municipality or local board, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the city or a local board, advice that the subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the city or a local board. We already took a vote, and I already read the next part. I'm going to ask staff now that are not directly related to the in-camera items to please exit the WebEx. Also a reminder to members of council that per section 8.7 of the procedural bylaw, the use of personal electronic devices during closed meetings are strictly prohibited. However, the use of city electronic devices during closed meetings are limited to text communication only, with the city's electronic devices not being used as a telephone, recording device, or camera. Staff from the Office of the City Clerk are exempted from subsection 8.7C when using electronic devices for record-keeping purposes. Welcome back, everyone. We are back in open session, and we are at 11.4 CM 2600008A, Cyber Resilience Update Q2 2026. Mover and seconder for the following that the report CM 26008A be received and remain confidential. Councillor Kassar, Councillor Crutch, show of hands, please. That carries. Thank you. Moving on to 11.5. LS 19028A, update on expropriation of 70 Branch Street, Ward 3. Mover and seconder on the following, that the direction to staff enclosed be approved. Councillor Kassar, Councillor Wang. Do I need to read out all these other things? Okay. Closed session recommendation 1 to confidential report LS 19028A be approved and remain confidential unless made public as the city's position before the OLT as necessary to secure the claims withdrawal pursuant to minutes of settlement, and that the balance of report LS 19028A remain confidential. Show of hands, please. And that, oh, sorry. I just wanted to be on the record that was not my error. Thank you. And the electronic vote is up. Very responsible. Please vote accordingly.
Councillor Francis, Clark, and Jackson. Thank you. Got it all. Thank you.
That carries 10-0. Thank you. Moving on to 10.6. LS 26014, legal advice regarding indemnification bylaw. May I please have a mover and seconder on the following? Councillor Crutch, Councillor Maureen Wilson, that the direction provided to staff in closed session respecting report LS 26014 be approved and remain confidential, and that the report LS 26014 remain confidential. Amazing. Electronic vote, everyone. And that carries 10-0. And just before I adjourn, thank you to all the councillors that stayed today, the ones that participated yesterday, the ones that stayed for AFNA this morning. There's not a lot of staff here, but to all the staff that spent the last day and a half with us, thank you very much. This was the best GIC I've had in 4 years, I promise. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we are adjourned at 4:11 p.m. on July 30th. Have a great night.